This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.
We'll talk about the criminal justice system. That's a good legal subject. Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson. It's my pleasure to have with us a frequent visitor, Dr. Mr. Buck Melton. Welcome, Buck. Now, among your many attributes, I believe you are a lawyer. I believe you've been to law school and taught in law school, and you're a member of the bar. So we have a conversation tonight about the criminal justice system.
Fire away.
Do you feel equipped to chat about that?
Well, I can run my mouth on that as well as anything.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You know, we've had these major issues recently in different parts of the country where the idea is the police have exceeded their mandate, particularly with Afro-American citizens, and they've injured them, they've not acted correctly, and there's been this extraordinary response. And right now in New York City, there's terrible tension, maybe other places in the country. Does the criminal justice system well enough specify what police can and cannot do in situations of confrontation, so the rights of the citizens are protected and the responsibilities of the police to enforce the law, that it works out? Any comments on that?
Well, I would start with the observations of John Adams, and he copied it from others, that what we aim for is a government of laws and not of men. But when you have so many men and women,
yes, right.
In so many different situations, unfortunate events are going to happen. And once again, you can try to legislate to try to keep those events down.
Yes.
And the general rule for police is that they can always escalate the violence one level
yes.
above whatever violence that the suspect or the perpetrator is using, up to and including the use of deadly force. If the policeman has a reasonable belief that his life or he's facing
yes.
a danger to his life, or he's facing grievous bodily injury, or a civilian is facing grievous bodily injury. But when you get into tense situations, bad things can happen.
Yes.
And they do.
Well, let me ask this question. Are the laws that are out there, are they getting so restrictive? In other words, say you're an Afro-American person, you like to, I don't know, you like to play your radio loudly. I mean, you just have you have sort of a big boom box, and that's just culturally okay. Mm-hmm. And then there's some kind of law that says you can't play your radio. I mean, there's so many laws out there. Or I think one event that took place in New York City was the unfortunate story of the person selling cigarettes. Selling cigarettes, it seems to be a pretty harmless
yes.
trade,
yes.
untaxed cigarettes. The police are being asked to do things. Or I think another story was somebody walking down the middle of the street. Now, all these issues are more complicated, yes. But the idea is that the laws are forcing people to act in a pretty straight and narrow fashion. Mm-hmm. Is that an appropriate use of law, or are the laws too expansive, I guess, is my comment?
Well, I'm becoming an increasingly civil libertarian as I get older, and I think that's a function of the population growing, the living spaces being more cramped. And with all due respect to John Adams, you can't pass a law for everything. And there are a lot of people today who, whenever something goes wrong, the immediate
yes,
answer
right.
is, let's pass another law.
Yes.
If the CIA failed with September 11th, we need a director of national security.
Yes, yes,
If the market crashed in 2008, we need to pass some more laws for more regulation. But the common law system, the idea of our legal system, is that there are a potentially infinite number of fact patterns that could happen. Walking down the middle of the road, for
yes,
instance,
right.
that you can't just stop and look it up in a book.
Yes.
Even if on the off chance a law is there on the books, you don't have time to stop and look it up. And the odds are that no matter how many laws you've got, you're going to have facts that are not addressed. So that means that the law enforcer is going to have to use some sort of discretion, that there are rules of engagement, there are departmental guidelines, but they're always open to interpretation.
Well, it's too much burden being placed on the police. In other words, it's a very tough job. There are a lot of things out there. If there are literally hundreds of things the police have to enforce,
Yes.
this law, this regulation, this.
Yes.
That just, it puts them, it causes maybe a lot of distraction, if I can
Yes.
phrase it that way.
Yes.
If you parking tickets, whatever. I mean, I don't know. Any comments? Just the amount of laws on the books that police are obligated to enforce
Yes.
becomes so daunting that it becomes an impossibility.
Well, I'd say that's just the starting point. We start with that. You're having to look for too many things. You're going to have to make judgments, speeding ticket or burglary or whatever.
Yes.
But then add to that when you interact with individuals, it's usually going to be in a situation of stress. They've
Yes.
been burglarized, they've been robbed,
Yes.
whatever. You're stopping somebody who may be suspicious of the police.
Yes.
I'm black, you're white, you're stopping me, so there's going to be a tension there. That you yourself are a big fat target. That the bad guys are going to have initiative.
Yes.
That you'll be walking down the street, they may see, and this
Right.
is what happened in
Right.
New York.
Right. Yes.
You're going to be dead before you have a chance to even defend yourself.
Right.
So this is a recipe for.
Well, now,
for
one of
problems.
the things, you can listen to what the Europeans have to say about this, and anything that happens that's not good in the U.S. or a bad event is immediately widely discussed on European news shows. Actually, if you watch this channel, you'll be able to see some of those, and any shortfalls are out there. But one comment is that there's so much gun control in European countries that police don't feel as threatened as much. So it would be well, it happens, but it's pretty unusual. If you go in as you're a policeman and you have an issue here, you don't feel like your life is going to be at risk, as it would be in the U.S., where the guns are just prolific and are everywhere.
Yes. Well, the problem with that is that's a genie that was never in the bottle here, and I don't think you could put it back in. The old saying, if guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. It would be impossible to clear these guns from the street. And to utter another platitude, when seconds count, the police are just minutes away.
Yes.
This is the world we've got. It is very deeply rooted in American culture. I don't see any way of unrooting it.
Yes.
That it's just a dangerous circumstance. The thing that concerns me more in what we've been seeing lately is the degree of distrust and hostility towards the police, not just from the African American community, but from anyone who is concerned that we are getting too many laws. And this goes back to Charlton Heston making his infamous statement to the NRA about the jackbooted thugs,
Yeah.
by which he was referring to American law enforcement.
Yes.
Coming to take away our liberties. Unfortunately, that is also deeply rooted in the American experience. This idea that ultimately we're a frontier culture, and I have the right to do things, and it's none of the government's business. But
Well, what about life in a submarine? Let's say, if you have different rules for a submarine and
Yes.
different rules if you're, out in the, I don't know, the God's country out with the bluebirds and the Rockies, whatever, and just the coyotes around.
yes,
Different sets of rules. And in an urban place like New York, that's
Yes.
just an extraordinary place, isn't it? If you think about it. I mean, there are maybe 20 million people in the metropolitan area. They're from everywhere. There's every kind of ethnic group, language, belief, every kind of system you can think of. All those 20 million people are in the submarine, and the rules that need to be there are a different set of rules.
yes.
If okay, we're going to like every man's his castle, whatever. You come in my house, I'll shoot you. You come in my apartment, I'll kill you.
Yes. Well, I have two reflections on that. One is I think I would take issue with your submarine analogy, because a submarine, everyone there is in our modern Navy is self-selected to be there, and that in itself is going to lead to, if you will, a domestic tranquility aboard that sub that you don't really have in New York. Another reflection of New York, and this, once again, this happened to me I think this was in the 80s, and I was taking a very ill-advised walk in Central Park one evening, and there were these guys razzing this other person, and I was, at that point, realized that, I needed to get out of Central Park, and I was headed to the exit. But the guy who was being razzed picked up this big tree limb, and I thought, you really are living in the jungle here.
Yes.
But then as I came out of Central Park and I looked around and the cars are driving, the people are walking, I was thinking, well, by and large, this city of 10 million people gets along without police walking around in riot gear with assault rifles on every corner. It gets along fairly well.
And so, we need to respect their culture, the way they've done things, and in a lot of the ways, I guess you have a lot of complexities about New York, but presumably things are much better. I guess I'll have my one New York City Central Park story in my younger days, because I can share the story. I was a fellow at Sloan Kettering, which is a big cancer hospital, and every day it would be my custom to run through Central Park at night. And people warned me, whatever you're going to be killed running around Central Park at night. And the one adventure I had was I rounded sort of the corner in the middle of Central Park, and I heard a band there, and I stopped, and there was a Dixieland band there, and I was offered a glass of champagne, and I said, "What's going on?" And the person said, I had an accident here some 10 years ago, and on the anniversary of the accident, I have a little party here, because I was saved, I've lived. It's sort of an epiphany for me, and so that I drank the champagne and off I ran. But it's a wonderful New York story, isn't it? So that's a good. So all of these flashes of humanity, it's not the dim evil place that some might imagine. All these flashes of great humanity happen, and just making the system work is complicated. Now, one of the things that I think Mayor Giuliani has discussed is the idea that once you I discussed the role of laws, and maybe the laws are too little or too many or whatever, the laws are too ferocious, but he makes the case that you have to be not 1 inch over the line, that you can't go 1 inch past this line. Once you put the graffiti up, once you, urinate in public, once you do something like that, the whole sense of civility just goes down, and the police have to enforce that civility or the place just doesn't work. And so thus, the police could be perceived as, pushing that boundary. It's very difficult to push that. It's complicated, but that's the argument on the other side. I was making the submarine analogy. I'm not totally going to retreat from that. I will accept the idea that you've put a lot of people that don't necessarily want to be in the submarine, that don't know each other, that have been in these very cramped, complicated conditions. Everyone is there together, trying to get along, and just a few malefactors could really take the place down. Somebody that left the little valve open or whatever. The rules have to be more stringent.
Yes, I think so, but once again, I would view that as the cost of liberty. One of my great mentors at Mercer, Jim Cox, would point out that give the government enough power and a Playboy bunny could walk naked across Central Park, and he actually, I believe, used Central Park as an example, but in that kind of, and be perfectly safe.
Yes.
But in that kind of system, the police would be giving her a terrible time wondering what she was doing walking across at midnight. Ultimately, given this kind of population density, it comes down to: do you want to take your chances with your fellow citizens, or do you want to take your chances with a strong-arm government? And there's still enough of the civil libertarian in me to say I'll take my chances with my fellow citizens.
Well, we could discuss that a little bit.
Yes.
So we have one of the things that goes on in a place like New York is you have people that a tremendous number of people weren't born here. They're just sort of like they're on the periphery of North America in many ways. And so they're trying to, not everybody, but a lot of people, they're trying to sort of come to grips with its new circumstances. They're just there. In some places, the sense of community is very strong and very powerful, and maybe less so in other places. But using the Central Park analogy, I think the culture, if the cultural event, the sense of community, righteousness, really diminishes the need for police. So if you're in a sort of a Greek mountain village, and you urinate in public or whatever, you'll just the people around you will take care of the situation.
Yes.
I mean, they'll take care of you. They won't be allowed there. But in this other environment, if you could, and I think people have tried to do that. They've tried to encourage as much local control as possible, and I think particularly Mayor Bloomberg took some major steps in that direction and was really sort of a master at this.
And the police need to be seen as part of the community.
Yes, absolutely, not alien. Not
an occupation force. Yeah.
And so we get into another complicated question, is that if you, allegedly, we have sort of a colorblind country, we have this and we have that, but should the police force in different kind of communities reflect the ethnicity of the community? I mean, that seems to be one of the tensions that's happened in these different places, is the idea is that the communities are saying, we only want people of our ethnicity in our community.
Yes. Well, I think that balkanization is to be avoided, but with that proviso, I think that we had a period in our history, probably in the 50s, 60s, 70s, when you see a lot of this working its way into social theory and jurisprudence, that the Constitution is colorblind, for instance, or if you look at feminism, there is no difference between women and men. And I think that's naive and unrealistic. I think we need to embrace that there are differences and say that if putting black officers into a black neighborhood is going to effectively further the mission, then why not? If it works. And unlike the military, in our previous episode we were talking about the military, and the military really is not designed to be a peacekeeping force, but a force designed to use violence to achieve an end. The police are a peacekeeping force, that ideally that policeman is going to diffuse the violence and obviate the need for going to court or having a criminal trial to begin with. And if you are seen as a member of the tribe, the white tribe, the black tribe, or whatever, then and that helps further the mission and keeps the peace better, then let's go for it.
Yes, yes.
Once again, without balkanizing.
Right.
We don't want to get to that degree.
It's complicated, isn't it?
Yes.
We have police review commissions. Mm-hmm. There are all kinds of efforts underway to make the system work. I mean, it's just not everybody wants civility and they want the system to work. Mm-hmm. But is the centrifugal force in America it's something that's amiss here, isn't there?
Yes.
I mean, the sense of tension that's on our streets, and a lot of this is economic.
Yes.
It's the lack of meaningful, the possibilities of meaningful life for many people. And I don't know if it's just a symptom. It's not, and their answer is not mm-hmm. so much resolving the criminal justice system yes. or resolving the relationships between the police and the people that live there, but it's the more complicated societal question
yes.
about I guess, human possibilities.
Yes. Well, it goes back to free will and self-determination. And if you feel like you are being made to obey a bunch of laws in which effectively you have had no say, theoretically maybe, because there's a congressman from
yes,
this district
yes.
or whatever, and if you want to add to that your belief that those laws are not being fairly enforced, then the policeman does become the enemy.
Yes.
And I think the fact that in the last 10 or 20 years we have seen policemen with automatic weapons who are decked out in military
yes, yes.
garb, they do start looking like an occupying force, and it's seen in a very hostile manner. In a larger sense, if you're black, you're a member of, and I'm talking about black civilian, you're a member
yes,
of
right,
the
right.
traditionally low-income group. It's
not always,
demographically, demographically the
yeah,
worst
right.
off. And if you feel, rightly or wrongly, that the rule of law has not been uniformly applied to your community, to the black community or to your race,
yes.
Then you are going to get, once again, rightly or wrongly, the very cynical, angry response to the grand jury finding in Ferguson that you saw. Now, I do have a problem with that. You do need to say the rule of law, the jury has spoken. But what if the reply is, but the jury always speaks this way and my community always gets the short end?
Well, it's complicated. I mean,
yeah.
One of the things going on, I understand, is that supposedly grand juries are secret and you're not supposed to do something. One of the jurors there is saying the process was wrong, he didn't get the correct information, he's suing.
Yes.
I don't know if that and I want to unhinge whatever happens.
Yes.
Maybe presumably the person was in the minority on the vote of whatever transpired here.
Yes, perhaps. Well, how far do you go? And I've wondered, and I ask my class this sometime, I say, has anyone here ever gotten a speeding ticket? And some students will raise their hands, and I'll say, now, do you believe that you were wrongly given that ticket and you were wrongly convicted of speeding? And once again, I'll get at least one or two students who says yes. So I say, all right, you believe that the system failed you, that the law resulted in a miscarriage of justice in your place. Do you believe that the remedy is to go blow up the state capitol building and the county courthouse?
Yes.
No. Well, at what level would a violent response, would revolution, because that's what
Yes,
we're talking
right.
about, be the acceptable response? What is the difference in the rioting in Ferguson and the Boston Tea Party? Now, I believe there is a difference.
Right.
But you
Well,
wanna put that
what
together?
about the idea of the media is sort of driving this. The media tries to make money, they want viewers, and so it's showing some, I don't know, rioters or people, disturbed people on the street jumping around. That makes good things to see.
If it bleeds, it leads.
And the amount of attention that goes to that. I mean, you could say there are over 300 million people in the country, and all kinds of events were taking place that were not, that reflected a different side of America. Yet this is the picture that was presented worldwide. And so if you look at the Russian television station or the Russian news network, I mean, they're talking about, America's on the ropes. We have all this terrible racial divide that's present. And that seems to be a theme that attracts viewers and ergo advertising dollars. So one of the things that happens in the country is that some of its, friction points are accentuated by the media's desire for viewers.
Yes.
And maybe that's not the appropriate, I mean, I don't know what you can say about it, rightly or wrongly, that's an issue.
It's the old Don Henley song, Dirty Laundry, and I hate to be critical of the media here, but there is some truth to that. Good news is no news, as I like to poke fun at them a little bit.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, if you look at racial tensions, we've always had that in this country.
Yes, we have.
Look at the race riots in New York in 1863. Look at the 50s and 60s, and progress is being made. Obviously, we're not where we should be. Someday we may be, maybe not. But and America is in trouble. I think economically we're declining. The national debt has got me terrified. But I think the rest of the world just loves to.
Well, let me maybe just make some kind of comment about that. Often we have to compare ourselves with our other creatures that walk the earth. So, okay, America's going down on and on. Well, at the same time, other places seem to be having more substantial problems than we have. So it's true enough that we're not where we'd like to be. But if you look presently at the economic conditions, you have this, you have that. There are a lot of things that are extremely positive about the place. It's really a great experiment. We've set a sort of an arbitrary economic zone, whatever we want to call the place. I like I'm going to switch my word to experiment. It's quite an experiment, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the way we should look at it. And we have people from everywhere. And this is where the pedal meets the what do we say? The pedal meets the road, or whatever.
Rubber meets the road.
Okay, whatever the turn of phrase is. We have people from everywhere. We have all these tensions, and if you look at our species, this is an extraordinary thing. This is very, very unusual to have people of such diverse ethnic and genetic backgrounds all together, all trying to get along with all these tremendous social tensions, economic events taking place.
And for the most part, it works.
And also, the other thing that's out there is change. So change is a very destabilizing kind of event here. Everything is changing so rapidly. And the system has many good features in it that sort of self-correct, do they not?
Yes.
We could say something bad about politicians. Nevertheless, the system does have a tremendous self-correcting ability because the democratic system is there. The politicians have to respond to sort of these, at least some of the opinions that are on the street, rightly or wrongly, whether they're good or bad, whether they're not well informed, that they respond, and we're sort of clumsily managing, we're muddling through better than most places.
Yes, sometimes they should respond faster, but what can you do? And you talk about the rate of change, and I think of technological change. Since the Industrial Revolution began, the rate of change has just been accelerating, and that in turn causes social change to move at a huge clip.
Yes.
And the fact that media is so ubiquitous now, you can hear more bad news 24/7 now.
Yes.
All bad news all the time. And so it sounds worse.
Yes.
You had plenty of bad news 100 years ago, but if a typhoon hit and killed 1 million people in Bangladesh, you wouldn't know about it. So,
what about this? What about this, Bucky? The way the media responds, they don't tell us what we need to know. I guess you'd say that, but what we sort of what we want to know. I'd phrase it that way. So the media is responding to, we'd like to see in a perverse way, I don't know, someone run over by a bulldozer.
You slow down and look at the car, right?
All right, that's right. Or I don't know, some story about a starlet that turned out the starlet was on drugs or some kind of perverse thing like that. And so much of the attention is directed in that way. Or when we have, police tensions, that just makes such good press. But maybe we should be looking at, I don't know, the balance of trade numbers or the criminal arrest picture or the school dropout numbers, something fairly boring, but people should know it.
Yes.
And comments, maybe, actually in Cuba, maybe they do get the things you're supposed to know.
Perhaps. The two things that come to mind there, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Untouchables or not, but when, who's the actor
Elliot
who plays,
Ness.
who
Elliot
plays
Ness.
Capone, Al Capone, who says, I'm serving the needs of the people here. There is a need that has been expressed for this alcohol, and I'm simply supplying.
Right, yes.
And that's the big thing that comes to mind. I don't know that 1984, Fahrenheit 451.
Yes.
That's another one that this one of the first great dystopian novels that people no longer think anymore, and they simply stare at their big screen TV.
Right,
Very
yes.
prescient
Right,
technologically.
yes.
Reality shows all were imagined in that. But you tend to think that an autocratic government came to power and forced the people into this type of life. But near the end of the book, it is revealed that the people voted this in. That is what they wanted, and the government gave it to them. So.
Yes. Well, I'll tell one story about my journey through life. But many years ago, I was in Lithuania just as the place was imploding and the Soviets were going out. And I was in a very cold hotel room. There's a television there, and they had the Russian channels on there, and they had the proverbial tractor factories. The people were the things that you probably want to know, but also the state wanted you to know this, and they also wanted you to look at the state in a favorable line. Yes. So the television is a way to sort of like secure your loyalty. And then in flipping through there, there was one American show, Santa Barbara, whatever. I mean, so they're the guys. What a polar difference, and how attractive that culture was. As to, the people were just, this was just an indulgent world, as contrasted to the tractor factory with the state attempting to tell you something. And maybe in a way, that's the way that the West won the Cold War.
Imperialism for media.
Maybe that's the way they won it. Well, once again, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
We'll talk some more.
Indeed.
Thank you.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.